morning everyone, welcome to my channel. My little house is complete. Love it. It came up so well. It was a lot of work, but I'm really happy with the way the form has come together of the house from the original photo, which is that one there. So similar but different. So I'm pretty pleased with it. So the main things I did this time that I hadn't really discussed in my second video was the outlining of the house. I chose a steely blue color. It sort of matched the roof here and sort of helped define the house a little bit more. So I've ended up doing couching, where I've laid down a line of thread and then went back over it every 1/4 of an inch with a little stitch just to hold it down. Couching is one of my favorites. It really helps create straight lines or curves. Sometimes running stitch is just too, I don't know, too textured. And what you need in an image is just a straight line. Couching is the way to go. Now around the chimney, I couched the sides, but then used a line of beads at the top to give definition to the top of the chimney. And then I put some little sequins with a little gold bead in them. I'm just tilting the book a little bit so you can get a bit of a dimensional view of it. See the line of purple beads at the top, and then just a few little yellow French knots on the actual fabric. In the the guttering here, all I did was add some purple little seed beads just to jazzy it up a little bit. It was pretty enough without too much more. Didn't do anything else in that zone other than then forming my windows. I put a couple lines across here to denote that that's 2 sections to the house, and I did a heap of seed stitch in here just to create a different texture in that area so that it looked a little bit different to this bottom section. With the door, I used white to highlight the door, and then just a couple little stitches on that piece of lace just to sort of give it a bit of feature around the top of the door and the windows, of course. I put in a little tree on the side here with just some little French knots. What else did I do there? I think that's about it. The fence didn't change. I still have the gate swinging open, inviting people in, that 3D effect. If I turn it, you can see that it's very textured. I did put a line of little plants in here, little green stitches with little purple French knots on top. Didn't do anything else to the roof other than put the window into position. I did try and burrow stitch this in here, but it just didn't look right. It looked like modern met old, if you know what I mean. I think it was beautiful enough without having my stitches go through there. Now the bottom, I did a lot on the bottom. I did combinations of appliquing in little lace motifs, like these guys come from a lace. Buttons with little tassels tied through them. I popped some lavender in here at the side. There's that piece there that was already pre-made, and I just put some little gold beads in the center. On the very bottom is just a combination of clusters of little beads and little knots or French knots with a loopy. That's a French knot, but I've left a loop coming out of the top of it, and I just meandered my way along. I did pop in the odd really big bead, and they're from like pieces of jewelry or the beads you pick up from kids' jewelry packs when you see them at cheap shops. There's some interesting pieces in there. This is just a little piece of lace. I just felt like I needed a breather as I was coming along the bottom with all of this clustered work. I just felt like I needed just to stop for a moment. So I ended up inserting this little piece of lace, if I can get it to the camera. It's a leaf, a flower, leaf, a flower. So it's just a breather. Tucked in a button behind, and then carried on with this cluster work. It's just beads and knots and buttons and big beads, little beads, some glass beads. And then I got to the side and finished up with even more of those clustery sort of feel. Just made it messy, like pebbles. Then up the side here, I've got a couple little gold beads and pistol stitch. some flowers that are like a gold metal and put a little bead in the center of them to hold them into position. I did a running stitch up the center of the tulle that I wove through that piece of lattice work, for want of a better word, the piece of crocheting. I didn't do too much to the center of the yo-yo this time, but I did pinch in the yo-yo all the way around just to create the illusion of a flower, because they're circular. So by putting a little running stitch and then pulling it tight, you're sort of breaking up the circular shape by doing that, and it's a lovely way to make a little flower out of a yo-yo. What else did I do? I ended up putting a little extra lace. I think you probably noticed that in the last video, but I ended up putting this piece and that piece of lace on to, I don't know, it just felt very plain at the top, and there was so much going on everywhere that I just popped that on there. And then when I stitched it into my book, I was a little bit short on the sizing, so I ended up putting this piece through here, but my sides were so much bigger, so I had to cut it down quite a bit. And I even, in the process, over on this edge over here, I had a little purple button, and he had to go as I had to trim it down to get it in properly. I don't know what happened with the last few pieces, but they've just got bigger and bigger. When I went back to this book to sort of finish it off, because it's now full, the last two pieces are huge. So I don't know, it's just got out of hand. I think I'm just enjoying it so much that I just keep adding and adding, and it needs to be a bigger palette of space to work with. So yeah, it was quite amusing. So she's in my book. My book is complete. I ended up redoing my book, as I mentioned in a previous video, because I had 3 signatures, and by the time I've put in the pages that I've done so far, she is full, and I did not want it to be a gator mouth. So I end up taking out the middle signature, which I think I discussed on a previous video. But then after I put these pages in last night, it needed to be readjusted. So I ended up cutting them out completely and making sure that they were nice and secure, which is outside the book, and then stitching them in again. And I did a different stitch. The previous video, or the previous time when I made it, I did a stitch that encompassed the whole, how do I explain this? The whole spine. I think I come up here, went down here, come up here, went across to here, then scooted back down. It was like one thread did the whole lot. I think I saw that on Rachel's video that she did in a journal. And I found that it was wriggling around too much. I just wasn't happy with the way that was seated. So I ended up, being that I pulled them out completely, I've ended up doing a 3 pamphlet stitch on each tab. Okay, so it's here, here, and here. And what I mean by tab, these are the tabs. So they're just fabric glued on to the cover boards. And then I did 3 holes. 1, 2, 3, that's the one signature, and 1, 2, 3 is the second signature. As you recall, I did have up to 4 in here, but I've slowly taken the others out because I never imagined that my work would be so thick, and I'm adding beads and textiles and layers upon layers and doilies. So the best this signature is ever going to hold is the 4 pieces that I've got in there. Now my spine width is 1.5 inch. So to be honest, it probably needed to be 2.5 inches to fit any more in there. So, but that's okay because I've got a few of these books. They're old cookbooks. So I'm ready to start my number 2 journals for the next few prompts. So it's not an issue. So what else can I tell you? Oh, I decided because I'm not doing a stitchery on the spine like the girls are doing, or a tie, because my book sort of doesn't need a tie. It's sitting beautifully flat and my spine is a little bit different. So I'm not doing anything down there. I decided to put on the tabs a little bit of lace here, here, and here. And then I went through the book, and where the tabs appeared again here, I put a little bit of lace. So it's just a little detail, just a little bit extra. And sort of felt like I was doing then a treatment on the spine. So that's my book. It is complete. It's come up beautifully. So I'm really, really pleased. I must admit, last night when I was stitching this page in, I started sort of checking that these were all done. I found the odd pin and, you know, random bits and pieces that were yet to be completed, I guess. And I started looking at my work, and it's just all so different. Even some of the stitches, I'm like, oh, I could have done that on the house. I could have done that on the house. Like, I'd really forgotten so many stitches that I'd used, you know, throughout the process. So these books are just going to be lovely to have and look back through, especially if you're about to start a project. There might be something that you've done here where you really loved this little spot of needlework, and then you want to expand on it on another project. So I think these books are just going to be such a resource of embroidery ideas and slow stitching techniques that I think we'll be forever flipping through them. Now, I do have my pockets on the front and the back cover. So I'm thinking along the lines of creating just a small little stitchery book that will fit in here. And if I don't go too crazy with the thickness of it, which I probably will, I would have enough room to slide in a little booklet. I haven't done the stitches where they did the sampler. I haven't done that. I did this page instead. This was sort of my sampler. There's all sorts of stitches in there throughout, so I sort of didn't want to confine myself to just a normal layout. But these pockets might end up being a sampler of some sort in the future. So great little project one day. Not sure when I'll do it. The other thing that you may be wondering where these came from, because I used that as my sampler and then got so into it and just had to get started, I did the 2 bird pages. So technically they're not part of the project, but they're in there. I was keen, enthusiastic, as my mum would say. You're just enthusiastic. So they've joined into the book. Then came along the bunny. I ended up, while doing the bunny, I did the dragonfly, so still enthusiastic. And then the prompts were fancy flowers, butterfly, and then the little house. So I do have a few extra pieces in there, which is fine. It's just, as I said, I'm enthusiastic. That has slowed down a little bit because I did start my project to house all of my tags from last year's prompt with Anne Brooks, which I'll go to in a moment, because there's some stitchery that I did there which was inspired by the girls doing the spine of stitchery. Now, I did have in my tab a little brad with a loop on it, which allows you to attach fibres, textiles and charms. So I just put together some of the pieces that I've used throughout the journal and did them through the loop with just a little sling knot. So they're there, and then as I was walking away with it in my hand, I'm thinking it is so apricot and cream, yet there's so much pink on the cover. So once again, I'd gone off on a bit of a wrong tangent. So I looked back and I found this single piece of ribbon. So I just did a bow around the cluster of fibres. I'm lost for words, and I'm never lost for words. So that just finished it off beautifully with a little dangle at the side. I could add a charm, but I haven't yet. There's nothing that comes to mind that I really want on there. So if I do find something a bit special, I can always clip in a little charm. So that's my journal completed. So thank you very much for joining me on the process. I will grab a piece of stitchery first and show you. Now, because the girls are doing the spines on their journals and gave us all the prompt to do that, I sort of did it anyway, even though it wasn't on this book. I did it anyway with this project. So that's my spine piece that is going on my big journal, which houses all of my Anne Brooks challenge that we all did last year. And Rachel was great with that challenge too, because we saw Anne's style and then we saw Rachel's style, and it sort of stretched our minds a little bit, because the girls are so different in the way they form their tags and put together their design. So I've now worked out how I'm going to house mine because I didn't want them sitting out in my craft room getting all dusty. So they are now in their very own journal, which is sort of the techniques we've used with the slow stitch that we're doing with the Roxy girls. I still have opportunities to do a little bit of work because I had some tags left over that didn't quite fit the pages allocated, and they're going to be the inspiration for some work here and this page here, and the spare two that you've just seen flipping around will be on the covers, on the inside of the covers. So that's yet to have some stitchery, and of course the very front. So my journal inside, bar the stitching, is complete. And then the girls came up with the suggestion last week to do, last month, the last week of last month, to do a stitchery on the spine of our journals, and also a wrap, which I think I may do with this particular piece yet. So I had the tag as my inspiration, and then from that I expanded the same image, the same techniques out to create my spine piece. So next I'm going to glue that onto there with some PVA glue. I was going to try and have it ready for this video, but I just ran out of time. Then it'll wrap around and be glued on the other side and become the spine to this journal. So I'm really happy with that and how it's come together. So thanks, girls, for the suggestion. Perfect for a needle book. I will, as I create my second Roxy stitchery journal, I might do the spine a little bit differently compared to the tabs, so then I have the opportunity to do this on my second stitchery. Any excuse to, stitch away. So that, I just thought I'd show you, if anyone out there is doing a piece for their spine, I ended up doing it, but on a different journal of stitchery. Okay, I will leave it at that. That's enough gas bagging. Enjoy your stitching, everyone. Thank you for your kind comments. It's just been amazing chatting to everyone. Just beautiful. You lot out there, oh, so special. Really good. This is such a blessing. All right, I will stop yibby-yabbering, and I will see you all in the next video with the next prompt. And can you believe it will be May? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Before we know it, the Santa will be here. Oh, goodness me. See you all soon. Bye.